getting myself up. It took me long enough to get up here on my feet. Water. Yeah. I got 2 cans I can bring you. You can drink my still see. I can go get. Help you out. Anybody else? Yes. You want me to grab some? Mary, can we both get 2? Yeah, I got 2. Hi, Mary. You're good. Thank you.
Well, you might be for Don't hold that one today. This is not the time. This is not the time.
Walk out of there. Not bad. I guess it's not home. Just wait.
So busy. I feel like I had 6 weeks to go. The day ago.
Yeah, waiting. Her walking every single day. I think it's he was walking out right now. He's gonna say shoot.
But I'm really going to.
Did you remember the phone?
Yeah, I would not.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah.
So since every day, Leroy's not here now. It's a little bit like herding cats.
Well, everybody that was in here is now out getting
Getting
snacks.
refreshments. I know, they finally took me up on my insistent offer, like, please eat our food. I had a snack earlier. We have a library too.
Yeah, then what I eat, and then they eat it. Well, I test.
I thought real carefully about it. I thought, no, I'm really hungry. So, yeah, we'll chicken salad with cousins and cheese.
But if there's stuff left, I
Oh, there will
sure
be.
will.
They are generous with their portions. Ample, ample, ample. I highly recommend everything, including the cookies. When you started? This is lights.
No, it's really, just click the mouse and it'll end the stream.
So where do we put the mouse?
This year.
Just there?
Yep.
Okay. Love that. So don't touch that.
No, everything else.
Or
will be-
that.
Yep, well, if you
Or
touch.
that. How about that? Yes, you think I can do that? Because that just keeps you here so late.
Both of them are going to the ministry. So this is like a training master. So they will do that and get married, which will be a good foundation. Yeah. So we've got a lot of moving parts, but
Yeah, Aaron's Wednesday, or no Wednesday.
You found your passy. What? Yeah, he look a little bit like that. Probably a little chunkier, maybe. Little chunkier. Yeah, a little bit more chunky. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Lynchburg. I am Dr. Sarah W. Bailey, and I am an Associate Professor of Counseling. I'm the Counselor Education Program Director and the Director of the Ken West Center for Family Studies and Educational Advancement. I am delighted you are here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm grateful to the esteemed panel sharing the stage with me. Let's go ahead and do it now for the first time. I think we're going to be doing this a lot. I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves in just a moment, but for now, I want to pause. One of my primary professional identities is as a counselor, and as a counselor and a counselor educator, I believe it is important to speak truthfully and with compassion. Both of those things can and should happen concurrently. As moderator tonight, it is my intention to facilitate this discussion truthfully and compassionately. I also believe in the power of self-disclosure, and some of my students are here tonight, and you'll know what I mean by this. For those of you who don't know me, I am a reunited adoptee who spent several months in foster care before I was placed. My adoptive family also fostered a child for 6 years when I was growing up, so this is personal to me as I imagine it is to a lot of you. I know firsthand the lifelong challenges and risk factors associated with growing up apart from your biological family. I also know and recognize the necessity of culturally responsive foster care and ethical adoption practices in those cases when children's best interests are served by those systems. I think we can all agree that when it comes to foster care and adoption, our focus always needs to be child-centered. It is with that in mind that we gather here today to hopefully have a wonderful conversation, learn some things, make some connections. And I would be remiss if I did not pause here to recognize a panelist and a member of our audience without whom this panel discussion would not have become a reality. Mr. Leroy Wingo and Miss Mary Brown, and I have been talking about and dreaming of this for, what is it, 2 years?
About 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years. They are tireless champions for the welfare of children and staunch advocates for all the folks they serve. And on a personal note, I am proud to call them both my colleagues and my friends. Without further ado, again, please welcome our panelists tonight. I have 10 questions prepared. My intention is to get through all of them. We will see. But first, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce yourselves. I'll start with a question, and so this will be how we begin the introductions. Please tell us your name, and then briefly describe your role within the child welfare system, and then share how your organization's purpose aligns with the goals for improving outcomes for children in foster care and adoption. So we want to know who you are, where you serve, and how what you do aligns with care and improving outcomes for children. Ms. Mary, I'll ask you to start.
Okay, good evening.
Pass the microphone.
My name is Mary Rice, and I'm with Rice Counseling and Associates. I've been providing both parenting education and reunification focused outpatient counseling for over 22 years now for the Lynchburg area, as well as some of the surrounding counties. We've worked with countless youth in foster care, as well as foster parents, as well as adopted parents and adopted families extensively. We've been doing this, Rice Counseling, for over 15 years. I am very committed to working with this panel, working with this community on improving this process as much as possible. I also have seen some of the struggles throughout this process and the hardships, what the kids go through, what the families go through, how difficult it is for the foster families trying to be a catalyst in this storm for these youth as they're experiencing this trauma at times and as they're following up on the trauma they experienced in their biological homes. It means a lot to me to help and aid in this process, to try to bring healing, hope. I think that's a good word, hope, for what this could improve to be. Hope for what we can do tomorrow, hope for what we can do next year. And I'm thankful to be here, and hopefully I can contribute somewhat. Thank you.
I don't love a mic. Hi, my name is Dawn Wilson, and I work for the Virginia Department of Social Services, so I work for the state. I spent 15 or 16 years in a local agency, Campbell County, which I see them represented here tonight, in the foster care and adoption program as a supervisor at the end of that time. My current position is the Piedmont Region Permanency Practice Consultant. That's a lot of words and it sounds like a lot, but basically what I do is I support local agencies to understand and help them work through guidance, difficult cases. I also have some oversight a little bit on agencies, as Virginia is state supervised and locally administered. So we, the state, we create the guidance around the laws the General Assembly puts in, and we create the guidance around the federal laws that are also put in place. And then we support the local agencies to meet the practices in those laws. I think I know all the things. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So my name is Leroy Wingo. I'm the owner of Active Life Counseling Agency. I've been in private practice for the last 3 years. And doing so, I've been working with foster care and CPS, Lynchburg DSS, providing outpatient counseling and parenting services for the families, parents trying to get their kids back or keep their kids in the home. Before that, since 2015, I worked in CPS and foster care. I worked foster care as a caseworker and also CPS investigator in North Dakota. Then I came here and worked in CPS ongoing in prevention services, trying to help keep kids in the home. And so, once I became clinically licensed, I decided to come on the other side of this and try to work with the families to really engage them and meet them where they were, to be able to help them improve their current situation so that they can regain custody of the kids. And so I'm very passionate about what I do. I love this work. I spent 20 years in the military and, retired in 2011, and I got into this field. My mother worked in this field, so it was a part of me growing up. So it's kind of that natural progression. So I love this work. I'm committed to it, dedicated to it, and that's why we're all sitting here today, because I know everybody up here with me is dedicated to what we do.
Hi, my name's Liana Timberlake. I'm the Child Protective Services Supervisor here in Lynchburg. I've been in this role for about 3 years. Again, just kind of like everybody else said, I love this work. It's my passion. I can't imagine doing anything else. Our focus is obviously child safety first, but also, working with families, kin first, trying to keep children with families at all possible as long as they're safe. And just continuously improving that. I feel like there's been a lot of changes state and locally. We've made a lot of improvements in Lynchburg over the years that I have been there.
Hi, my name is Mark Stewart. I'm an area attorney, and as such, I often perform 2 different functions, actually. Sometimes I serve as guardian ad litem for children, and sometimes I represent parents as counsel for the parents. So I have to switch hats, so to speak, sometimes. And but either way, as indicated, ultimately we are all working, trying to do what's best for the child. That's the ultimate consideration. And I've worked with a number of these people who are on the panel, and some others I've seen in the community. And I guess I would just say that one of the things that I appreciate just about this area, Central Virginia, the counties and so forth, is that I think everybody tries to do their job as best they can. And sometimes that means that we are on the opposite side of an issue. But at the end of the day, everybody comes back together and tries to work for the best interest of the child. And I appreciate that about this area.
Good afternoon. I'm Kerry Payne. I'm one of the judges in the Juvenile Domestic Relations District Court here in Lynchburg. The shorthand of what we're talking about today, what we call dependency cases, you'll hear it called that, about children who are in foster care. I've been doing this for about 12 years. And as Mark had indicated, all of us have worked together many times in these cases. And I can tell you without a doubt that everybody on this panel loves children, wants children to be safe and in a stable environment. Part of the question is what do we do individually to assist this these children who are in foster care? Lynchburg Court is a best practice court. And by that I mean there are different agencies who are represented in our best practice team. April's on our team. I have a guardian ad litem who's on our team. I have CASA who's on the team. We have the court and the clerks. We have court service unit, which is the juvenile probation officers, because children can come into foster care off of delinquency cases as well. And then some other people that we're probably going to try to bring on this next go-around is Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, because they can come in off of delinquency, and one of our counselors as well. We recently had our team put on a training for local GALs and attorneys and DSS workers, and to do exactly what we're doing here, to interface with one another, to understand different roles that different people play, and to just start the conversation about, how can we do this better? So that's what we have done. Obviously, we can improve, and we hope to improve, and I'm thankful about being here today, too.
Good evening. My name is April Watson. I'm the Deputy Director for Lynchburg Human Services. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been involved in child welfare for, next year will be 20 years. I started with Lynchburg DSS as an intern. So, fun fact, sometimes your first field placement can turn into your career. So, oversee programs. So I guess technically I supervise child protective services, foster care, adoption, benefits, adult protective services, and I work very closely with the supervisors. I go in and I look at a lot of the data and information. I interface a lot with the city on budget and policy things. So a lot of things that I do today are not the things that I did initially. And so I initially started as a foster care social worker, and then I worked with resource home coordination, foster parent training, and then I became a supervisor. And so it's kind of changed throughout the years. And each job and role has been different but exciting, and I think that's kind of why I'm still here and why I'm still so committed to it, because it's like you can always, it's like the North Star. You want your practice to get better. You want children and families to stay together and to be safe, and so we're always just kind of still reaching for that best practice, and that change evolves over time. And so yeah, and I think a lot of what we do is kind of, you know, with human services, social services, and then sometimes the front door, you know, when an issue happens, we're one of the first contacts, and then we end up collaborating with everybody at this table. And you've heard a lot about reunification tonight. You'll hear a lot more about it. That's always the goal, is to keep, ideally keep children and families together, if not get them back together as quickly as possible. And in doing this work in almost the last, you know, 2 decades, things have evolved. The work we do has evolved, and what we're doing today, we didn't do 20 years ago. We didn't place kids with their aunts and uncles as foster parents. We didn't do a lot of these things, and so that's been really neat to watch as well. So thank you for having us here tonight.
Hello, my name's Dana Wright. So I'm the Children's Services Act Coordinator for the City of Lynchburg, and I work with all these folks for the most part. Our job is to try to collaborate and communicate with everyone. We oversee 2 multidisciplinary teams that work together with the families to try to come up with services to help them to become more resilient. We also provide training for folks in the field, case managers, as well as foster care workers. And we collaborate between the youth, the family, the providers, and the community partners. So every moment is a different challenge, and so I get a chance to advocate for everyone. So one minute I'm advocating for the youth, one minute I'm advocating for the providers. So our role is very unique in that any given moment we might be advocating for the person that we was trying to get on board to help or hold accountable the moment before. So it's all about communication and collaboration and trying to help assist both the youth, the families, and staff members in our community to be better trained to help resiliency in our community.
Good evening, all. I am Adrian Massey, and I consider it an honor, a privilege to be on a panel with such distinguished individuals. So I'm the director of Alliance Human Services, and Alliance is a treatment foster care agency, and we're located in Danville, Virginia, also in the great city of Lynchburg. And I've been with Alliance for almost 20 years, and we work hand in hand with the Department of Social Services. So what we do, we recruit and train individuals who want to become incredible foster parents. I think we may have some foster parents here. And we work with the Department of Social Services, and we match children in homes. And when the children are placed, we work hand in hand with the foster parent, with the family services specialist, with the court services personnel, consul workers, etc., in hoping to meet permanency. For example, a permanency goal could be return home. So we will do everything in our power to facilitate that. A goal could be adoption. We work with the family services specialists, with the foster parents, with the adoptive parents to facilitate that goal, because permanency is vital with children in foster care. Our agency also provides mentoring services to youth who are in foster care and also youth who are in their biological homes. Because often youth need a connection with a professional adult who can let them know that there is hope. We mentioned hope before. that we're here to support you, that you can achieve your dreams. We also have a parenting program. We work with the biological parents because sometimes, the parents need extra assistance. They need some extra guidance and reminders that, okay, you're on the right track, and what can we do differently to enhance what you're doing? Because ultimately the goal is for reunification, or the goal is for the children to remain in the home. We also provide tutoring services. When I grew up, math was quite different. And so it's a little different now, and I hear a lot of the youth saying, I don't understand algebra. So we assist with that because, the teachers are incredible. My father was a school principal, and so education is near and dear to my heart. And so a lot of the children need that additional tutoring, the additional support to understand those foundational principles. And as far as our alignment with the Child Welfare Agency, well, we work closely with the Department of Social Services. As I said before, I've known Ms. Watson for quite a while, Dana for many, many years. And when I'm able to see a child reunifying with their parents, with their guardian, or whenever I can see the permanency go back, then I feel that our mission is complete, because we are all here on behalf of children and families who are in need. And I want to thank you all for coming and listening to us today.
Thank you all. I took some notes as you were speaking, and here's some words that I heard them several times. Communication, collaboration, connection, hope, reunification, support, and permanency. And I heard the words child and children over and over and over again. So I think we're centering our focus on the right things. So and we'll start at the opposite end, sort of we'll go backwards if you will, and this is for anyone to answer. Let's talk a little bit about, in the spirit of collaboration, some of the collaborative efforts and success stories. So here's the broader question. In what ways, and you all have touched on this, are different entities working together to address the needs of children in foster care? And what successful collaborative strategies have you observed? Successful collaborative strategies you've observed in collaborative work between entities. And anyone can start, and I'll let anyone share.
This is a great question. And there are so many ways, I think, that all of us, all of our agencies, all of our entities collaborate, as well as the greater community. Lynchburg, often I'll say, is very rich in sometimes resources. The faith-based community, we oftentimes come together. Judge Payne referenced best practice court, and so those are training opportunities. We talk about kind of success stories. I think of in ways that we work together. I know that there have been times where we've identified needs in the community. Maybe it's we don't have enough foster homes to take teens, and oftentimes these partners, some of our private partners, they've come along and said, like, okay, we'll start a program. Like, we'll help with that. A lot of, I think, the services that Mary provides, they're not your traditional therapy, because Mary is at the agency, and then she's at their home, and then she's supervising visitation at the park. And so very flexible and accommodating to meet the needs of the child and family. And I think in this community, a lot of our partnerships are very, very flexible and open in a way that we can say, I need this. And somebody's like, okay, we've got that. We can figure that out. As I look into the crowd, I think of, for example, Care Portal, 518 Family Services. That's something that they've kind of brought to the table over the years. And I think of sometimes there was a child who wanted to be placed with his aunt, and her house needed some work done. And so that Care Portal, we were able to connect her with them, and they came and they redid her deck and got the steps built up to code, and they also got her dog's vaccinations complete. So that little boy then got to go live with his aunt out of foster care, and eventually she adopted him. And so those are just the many ways that we all connect and collaborate. We also have family partnership meetings, and those are meetings where all of us really come to the table with the family. The family gets to decide also who else is at the table, so they can invite other family and friends, people that are support systems to them, teachers, anyone in the community, and then oftentimes, again, us as professionals are there as well. But really the whole purpose of that is we sit together and we talk about the challenges. What does this family need? What are the barriers? And then what are the strengths? What are they doing well? And that's often a time where it's nice to have so many of us at the table, because Mary might see a totally different side of this family than I've seen. Judge Payne in the courtroom might see something very different. Well, actually, he doesn't come to FEMs, but if you were there, I'm sure you've had very nice things to say. But Mark and Liana and Adrian and Dana, depending on who's there, we all have different. We often interface at different places with individuals, and so we can say different things. Hey, mom's been getting her child to school on time the last month. Hey, she hasn't missed a therapy appointment. Dad has been clean for 6 months now. And so we can all contribute those things. And then we make a plan together. We brainstorm ideas and come out of that with a plan. So I think that's just another great idea, a way that we all come together to collaborate.
I think I'll add to the conversation. I think as my role as one of the service providers in the community for the families, collaborating with the workers is key. I look in the audience and I see a few caseworkers that I spend a lot of time talking with, collaborating with, and arguing with. We go back and forth, right? But one of the biggest things is that we all have the same goal of doing what's best for the families. Sometimes I challenge the workers and they get frustrated with me and I hear all kinds of things. But the purpose of that challenge is so that we're making sure we turn over every stone. At the end of the day, we want to give families every chance to get their kids back, their children, right? That's their pride and joy, and that they belong with families. So when we can turn over every stone and we can challenge each other to be better and make sure that we've met every need that we can meet, then we can be comfortable whatever decision happens after that. And so, my role is to really advocate for the family, advocate for the children, and then offer all the support I can to the workers as well, and so that we can have great outcomes. That's what we all strive for. I know Ms. Collins and I had a phone conversation with a client a couple weeks ago that unfortunately she didn't get her child back, but what she told us was, I really wish you guys had been my case managers from the beginning. My outcome probably would have been different. And so what that tells me is that people can change, right? And it takes time. Sometimes we want that within that time frame that we're working within. They have to do the services that's required. But the real goal is helping them create change long term. Because at the end of the day, they deserve it, and I guarantee you their kid's coming back home one day. And so we always strive to make sure that we're putting the best thing we can out for families and helping them improve and change. It's long term, it's lifelong, it's not just a case long.
Thank you for that. Let's look for a second at processes and challenges, because I'm sure that this work is also challenging. So can you highlight, and anyone please speak, can you highlight specific processes that contribute positively to the experience of children and families, as well as any that present significant challenges? So we're looking at processes that are supportive and present and offer positivity and contribute positively, but also some that may be challenging to kids and families.
I'll start. So we are very lucky in this community, and 2 of them are up here, so it just happens to be. But our community, even through COVID, even through all the challenges, we have had workers that have always gone into the house or into our building and worked with families face to face. So that is huge. We don't have enough of them, but the ones that we have are dedicated and do it tirelessly. And that is something that I don't think any other community can say. So the dedication of both our staff that we work with and our community partners cannot be duplicated anywhere else. And so that's a positive as well as a challenge, because there's only a few of them and they stick with us, and they keep telling me, we're gonna have to retire at some point. I'm like, well, please at least wait till I retire. So that I don't have to fight the challenge to replace you. But so that is something that our community has. Our community has heart and they care, and our providers go into the house and fight for our families.
when I think about collaboration, I think about the family assessment planning team. Dana knows a little bit about that. I'm also the chair of one of the teams in a different locality in Danville, and I've participated in fact meetings here in Lynchburg. And so some of you may or may not know what that means. So it's an interdisciplinary team that comes together that addresses the strengths and needs of every child in care. And on that team, we have individuals from core services. There's a parent representative, because it's important to have input from parents. We have someone from the Community Services Board, so that way we have that clinical guidance on the team. We also have someone from the school system. We also have someone from the Department of Social Services. So that way we have a number of perspectives and insights. So that way we can collaborate. Will everyone agree? No, not at all. However, if we can come to an agreement, if we can come to a resolution to determine what is in the best interest of this child or the children and the family. So I feel that teamwork approach is vital, and it definitely has yielded success for our young people. Now, kind of piggybacking on what Dana said, one of the challenges is trying to find those incredible individuals, those partners who can work along with us. That's a challenge. And also, from a foster care standpoint, finding foster parents. And because we know that everyone may not be aware of what foster care is. So just, spreading the word, letting everyone know that there is such a need for individuals to open their hearts and homes to children in need. So I think that's something that we collectively have to do.
So I think April alluded to this earlier. About a year ago, the state partnered with local agencies to do a Kin First Now initiative. And this is really changing the way that we do our work. This isn't like, we put something out there and then we find something new to do later. It's really making sure that we are placing children with people they know, with their relatives or fictive kin. A few years ago, we changed our definition of relative to include fictive kin. So like, for instance, when I was a kid, I had an Aunt Joy. She was not my aunt by marriage or blood or anything, but you couldn't have told me that when I was a kid. So now we are able to place children with their relatives or fictive kin immediately when they enter foster care. We've implemented a waiver system to do that quickly. And we offer these folks support. So they're becoming approved foster parents. They get financial support, they get services support, and that's really where we want to be. As a state, when probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think we were 8 or 9% of our over 5,000 kids in foster care that were actually placed with relatives. The goal is for Virginia to get to 35%. Currently, Virginia is at 22%, but I will tell you, Lynchburg DSS does a great job, and they are currently at 26%. So they are they are higher than our state average, and they really do see the benefit of placing children. And all of the service providers here also see that and help them with that. Some processes that might make that difficult are getting people approved at times. Sometimes there are some barrier crime issues that we are working on. So there are some things that are still a work in progress. But I think something that has really improved the life of children and their families in foster care is placing them with their relatives, people that they know, or sometimes don't know, but then they see their grandmother's picture on the wall or their aunt's picture on their wall, and they're like, hey, you're my family, that's cool. So it just really changes their life.
we could spend the rest of this time talking about water positive results and water challenges. The biggest challenge is people. And it doesn't matter if it's foster parents, DSS workers, guardians ad litem, attorneys, people. We don't have enough of them, okay? And so those challenges of getting those people who do it for the love of it, right? Not for the money, because I tell you, this guy could be making $300 an hour and not do dependency work, where he gets chump change at $55 an hour or $75 being in court an hour. Think about what the hit is that he has to take as an attorney. So sometimes attorneys will do it, and if they do it, and they do it well, like Mark does, then it's because they love the children, and they love the families, and they want to give back to their communities. When we talk about, I think Dana was talking about how good this community is. I was a prosecutor before I came on the bench, and I worked in counties, and I worked in the city as well. I can tell you that this DSS in Lynchburg, I would put up against any DSS anywhere in the state. Absolutely, without a doubt. They are that good. And what do I mean by that? Let me give you a war story, okay? I got a lady in a county, and they got a call, police got a call to go to the food line in the county, where they went, and there was this car, it's middle of December, so it's cold, and there's this car that we called in Iraq, we called them hoopties, right? Just a piece of crap car. And it's rusted out, and you know, the car's running, and smoke's coming out of the tailpipe, and the officer looks in the back, and there's this infant in the back of the car, and there's no parent around. So the officer waits about 20 minutes, and finally the parent shows up. And so they charge her with child neglect. Well, come to find out, the lady says, that's not my child. I took that child from a woman in North Carolina who needed a respite, and I came up here to visit family, so that's not my child, all right? Red flags should be going off in everybody's mind, right? Is it really somebody else's child? Has the child been kidnapped? What's going on with mom? Are they trying to evade DSS in North Carolina? All these things should be going on. So when I tell you that I put my DSS in Lynchburg above them, this is what the DSS did in that county. The DSS worker decided, well, you know, they had to put the baby in foster, or not in foster care, but in DSS custody because the woman got arrested. So what the DSS worker did was to call the biological mom in North Carolina instead of putting the child in foster care, and drove to Danville and gave that child back to the mother in North Carolina. Does that cause any issues for anybody here? Any concerns about doing that? One, it ain't protocol. And two, we don't know anything about the mom, the child, anything whatsoever. So when you have weird crap like that happens in other DSSs, that's why I'm telling you, they dot every I, they cross every T, and they do it by the book. Along with that, they also work diligently in trying to reunite these families with these kids. So my hats are off to them. My hats are off to Mark and the attorneys who do that. So those are just some challenges. And like I said, we could keep going and going and going.
I'd like to address one challenge as counsel for parents, more so than in my guardian ad litem capacity. And that's this. Obviously, when a parent's child has been removed or a protective order has been issued or something like that, the parents are necessarily defensive. And they think that the world is out to get them. And I often sort of tell my clients, look, DSS is not in the business of collecting kids. That's not why they exist. But they sort of feel like that they want my baby, you know, it's that sort of thing. The challenge that I have is that it would be great if sort of at the outset of the case, it was clearly communicated to that parent that under the statute, I have an obligation if it's at all reasonably possible, and safe for your child, to put you and your child back together. That's what my function is. It's not to collect your kid. It's to try to put you all back together. And if they would say something to the parent like, I'm committed to making that happen. Are you as committed as I am? I think that that would help to lower that defensiveness. That's automatic. You know, and the other aspect of it, I think, is that the layperson, the parent, they don't understand that a CPS worker works for DCS and a caseworker works for DCS, but they're not the same. They just see it's DSS and they got my kid. So that level of communication to help people understand the functions and the roles, and that really the statute requires effort to put people back together and sort of put the ball in the parents' court so that they understand if this does not happen, it's because of me, because DCS has done everything that they could possibly do to make it happen.
Just to add kind of back what he's saying is, my role in Mary and Adrian on the end, when those families transition from foster care and they come into, from CPS and they transition into foster care, one of the things I know I run into all the time, and I'm sure, Mary, we've had many conversations, so you can speak to this too, is that we're trying to get them, just like Mr. Stewart was saying, is to acknowledge that, hey, like, we're here to help you get your kids back. And sometimes the experience that they have with the investigators, because the investigators have a totally different role than foster care. And so their job, and you can speak more to that, their job is totally different. So now in this foster care process, we're trying to get them on going with services, support, and trying to help them overcome whatever challenges they're facing so that they can get their children back. The difficult part of that is getting them to change gears, right? If I'm already upset and I'm frustrated with the whole process, and I believe what everybody says, is that foster care and CPS is just trying to take people's kids and they get paid to do it. I hear that all the time. And I tell them that's not the case. Nobody wants your kid, right? But just trying to meet them where they are, understand the frustration, because what we have to understand as workers, as providers, is that a lot of times we're taking something from them that this is the only thing they have, right? A lot of us have comfortable lives where we go home, we have our nice homes and community and cars and support, and we have everything we want to some degree, enough to survive anyway. A lot of them don't have that, right? And all they have is their child that you just took from them, right? And so we have to understand where they are and then be able to meet them where they're at and then support them and try to help them overcome that thought process so that we can create some change. One thing we know is that finances is always a challenge with the work that we do. Mary and I have had many conversations about funding and what we can get paid to do, what we can't get paid to do. I know myself, and I know you as well, we spend many hours putting out fires, crisis intervention, that we don't get paid to do, right? But we do it because we love what we do and we know it's necessary. A part of this conversation that we talked about was opening it up to the community so that we can be transparent and you can understand what happens in these processes so that we can better support each other. It's what you all do as family members of a child in care, understanding your rights, understanding things that's available to you, resources, and the processes can help you maybe be that support for your families and your kids. So it's many challenges that we could talk about all night, right? But ultimately, we all up here to make a difference, and that's why we're here tonight. So.
One of the processes that I'd like to mention that can kind of cause, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It has pros and cons. The Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. And basically that's this really long piece of legislation that says kids can't linger in foster care forever. They need permanency. And so a lot of what we do focuses on safety, permanency, and well-being. Is this child safe right now? What is the risk? Well-being, are their needs being met? Are they in school? Are they going to the doctor? Are their mental health needs being met? Are they seeing family? Their overall well-being. And then permanency, where are they going to grow up? It is really, really hard for a child not to know where they're going to spend their next birthday or Christmas, or when they're going to see mom again, or if they're ever going to see dad again. Those are really, really hard things. And so part of that was put in place to put a timeline on it. Right now, is a year. Give or take, you've got a year. When I first started doing this, we had longer than that. So every few years, they whittle it down a little bit. But, so a year, that's still a really, really long time for a child, right? To not know where they're gonna be. But for a parent with substance use issues, a year is not enough time, right? To be in recovery, to get past relapse and things of that nature. And so I can appreciate that, yeah, I can see, yeah, and that's one of the things that, like, as a social worker, like, I struggle with, like, a year is forever for a child, but it's nowhere near long enough for a parent who's in recovery or who's really working through some hard mental health issues. And so, yeah, I think that's one of those things that I don't think any of us have a perfect answer for, but that's a big thing that exists, and that timeline is in the back of all of our heads and at all times, because, you know, there are federal mandates, that's federal law, and so that guides a lot of the practice and reimbursements we can get to even to do some of this work. So, yeah.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think when these kids come into foster care, the parents are shocked. They're going through the hardest time often of their lives. They never thought they would get to this point. Many of them dream to have children, to have a family, and then they find themselves, like you were talking about, oftentimes in the throes of addiction. And I know I've testified in court many times that, you know, and I know that statistics and studies show that if a year of sobriety is what we're wanting, but we're dealing with an 11-month timeline. And then we're dealing with parents who are going through the hardest time of their life. So of course they're not jumping straight into sobriety. It doesn't happen that way. So they're in shock, they're mad, they're angry, they're going through a grief and loss process that is very similar to what the death of a loved one is really what sometimes what we're looking at. And so we're expecting them to, in some ways, pull off a magic trick. And we as providers, we're trying to help them as much as possible and trying to assist them in doing that when they're not trusting. Mark, you're 100% right. These parents they're upset, they're angry, and oftentimes because we come to social services to see them because that's where their visits are at. They think we're part of social services. So we have to try to break down those walls to try to help them understand that we're here to help you. Our job is to help you reunify, you know, and it's a very difficult, painstaking process for them. They're in survival mode completely. And some of them get out of that quicker than others, and they can begin the journey for sobriety. But so many of them get stuck in that. And because they didn't have, oftentimes these parents, they didn't have parents themselves to show them how to be a parent. And so it's such a struggle. You know, I'm sitting there and I'm like, gosh, this young lady, she just needs a mom. She needs a mom herself. So you feel like as providers, sometimes you always have to parent them through it and help teach them through it. So we have to wear so many hats, but I think that's what we gotta do to make this successful. We gotta get out of the box. I think that's why we're here talking. We gotta do whatever we can to help this reunification take place, you know, to help them be, you know, as I said, hopeful, the word hope, of what can happen and the changes that can be made. But these parents have to know that you can do it. Somebody's gotta believe in them. Somebody's gotta encourage them and tell them when they had a good visit, when things did go well. When you had a good, wow, you're more regulated today. What's happened? It's so different. Like, I see you doing so much better. What's the change? And they kicked those old associates out. You know, they finally said, you know, I'm getting rid of these people, places, and things. And you can see these positive spins and something positive happening in their life, and they need encouragement. And so there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things here that go into this process, all that are so relevant. But as you mentioned, I think what spun this conversation was the timeline. It's tough within a very tight timeline. And then, you know, and we're gracious enough sometimes to get some additional time if marked progress is shown. And that, you know, some parents really do deserve that. And really did earn that because, like you said, that extra 6 months they get, sometimes that first 6 months they're in shock. They're grieving. They're really trying to say, okay, I need to start this process towards getting help. But we try to, all along with that, I know we're trying to do everything we can to get that ball rolling as quick as possible.
One thing I'd like to say, just on that, because it's so important, oftentimes we don't acknowledge the workers, right? We talk about the parents and the processes and struggles that they have, but we never acknowledge the challenges and struggles that workers have. Working with these caseworkers every day, I see the challenges, I see the frustrations, I see the struggles. Can you imagine having 20 plus foster care cases and you're challenged every day, you're cursed out most of the days, you're going through the ups and downs, and then you're going through the court process, you gotta meet these deadlines by the state, you got so many things on your plate, and then we say get up and do it again tomorrow, over and over and over again. But we also forget they gotta go home to their families and deal with their own personal struggles, own personal challenges. I know when I worked foster care in North Dakota, the first 6 months of foster care, probably 3 months, I'd say. Almost every day I went home and cried, right? For the traumas and the things that I was seeing, that I was dealing with, that these families were dealing with. And they finally put in place service for us to be able to call and talk to counselors at night if we needed to. The crazy part about that, I would call the counselors, and before we get off the phone, the counselor was crying, right? You know, but that's how much trauma it was, right? But I said that to say, we have to also look at the workers and what they are going through and provide support for them so that they can get up and fight this fight every day. It's so important that we acknowledge that, and I think that's something in these processes we have to really start taking a serious look at. So I just wanted to bring that to light as well.
Thank you all for that. I'm looking at my counseling students. Might this be an opportunity for you one day to provide support? So I'm going to go back to some things that were said a little bit earlier about the legal system, because I think for a lot of us, the legal system when it comes to foster care and adoption may seem kind of mysterious. So we've got some questions for Mr. Stewart and Judge Payne specifically. How do legal proceedings, I'm talking about in the courtroom, in and outside of the courtroom, impact the lives of children in foster care and the adoption system? So how do they impact the children? And then what steps can be taken within the legal system to improve outcomes for these children?
As you've heard, the timeline is probably the greatest barrier that we have. And why is the timeline so important? It's interesting, I find it interesting that we in the Juvenile Domestic Relations District Court have a timeline. If I get to the timeline and I hear evidence I terminate parental rights, and that's appealed to the circuit court, it's amazing to me how that timeline seems to disappear at the higher court. I don't get it. Because we could have used that time to continue with the services and make those things happen. But the timeline is important because, as April said, it's a requirement by the federal government that we comply with that. What does that mean? Why is it important? In every order that I have to write down that reasonable efforts have been done for the parents, for the family, by DSS in trying to reunify this family. If I fail to mark that box or say it, right, from the day that I have that order until the day we come back to court, the funding for that child and family falls on the municipality, not the federal government. I've had children who have been in therapeutic foster care facilities at $100,000 a year for these kids. And if I don't make that block or that finding of reasonable efforts that they've done what they're supposed to do, the city of Lynchburg has the burden of paying that. Okay? So all these things tie in together. Is that necessarily fair? No. In many orders, I can go back and do what is called nunc-pro-tunc. In other words, I made a mistake on the date that I actually signed it. I'm going to change it. I'm going to nunc-pro-tunc the order, and it goes back to the date that I originally signed it. I am forbidden to do a nunc-pro-tunc to check that reasonable efforts block in these cases. So the city, and then I get a call from the city manager, and then April gets a call from the city manager. Everybody wants to know why, coming out of the city coffers that taxpayers are paying is this $100,000 bill that I screwed up by not saying reasonable efforts were found. So the timeline is crucial. you've heard everybody up here talk about how they get together and they collaborate with each other. I cannot collaborate with them on a case, all right? That would be ex parte communication. It's not ethical. I cannot do that. I have to wait for them to come to court and present the evidence. That's my responsibility. I have the easiest job of everybody up here because everything that has happened out there with the caseworkers, with the foster care workers, with the foster parents, with the children, the treatments that they've been getting, the counseling they've been getting, I get to hear all of that is in a condensed format when all of these efforts have been going on for months since the last time we were in court. So I have the easiest job to make those decisions. But as Mr. Wingo was saying, this vicarious trauma that he was talking about is real. And for those of you who are going into this type of business, you need to be cognizant of that. Vicarious trauma, what these children have experienced, what the families have experienced, it creeps on you, and it will hurt you unless you have avenues to take care of that. In fact, at that training I was telling you about, we had a whole 90 minutes on how to handle vicarious trauma. Because this is, it can be ugly. I mean, really ugly. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's all I got to say about that.
Say something on your behalf, if that's okay. He just said he has the easiest job in the room, or in a court hearing. I don't know that that's true, because ultimately sometimes the decision he makes is going to be whether a child ever sees their family again, whether they grow up with their family. And so that is also a very hard place to be. And I hope you acknowledge that too. It is very hard to sometimes make the legal decision to legally end a family or start a new one. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, do you have anything to add?
I suppose as far as the impact that the legal system has on the children, it's pretty much all governed by statute. And I would say that in principle or in spirit, I think the statutes are well written. Everything boils down to the implementation of it, though, of course. And there are a lot of safeguards that are built into that process. Everybody's talking about the 12-month timeline. There are times within which things have to be done. For example, if a child is removed, within 5 business days of that removal, the parents have to have an opportunity to come to court and to, contest that, sort of state their case. And it can be continued, but that's built in. That's a safeguard so that a family is not necessarily separated with no recourse for an extended period of time. And there are other, guidelines along the way when certain things have to happen. And so I think that in that sort of sense, there are a lot of protections that are built in. But again, how those things are carried out and implemented, the devil is always in those details. And sometimes different people can have different opinions. For example, there are often times that one attorney is representing a mom, one attorney is representing a dad, and they may be in the family together, not living in 2 separate households, but the attorneys can disagree on what the best way to move forward for these 2 people in the same household are. So as far as it impacting children, again, I think that the framework is there, but as with everything, it's how we carry it out.
Thank you. We'll shift a little bit into the arena of cultural competence and meeting the needs of diverse families. So, and this is for anyone, in your organization, how is cultural competence addressed within practices and policies? And what specific steps are engaged to ensure diverse family needs are met with respect and understanding? So how is cultural competence addressed? And what steps are taken to ensure diverse family needs are met with respect and understanding? And that question is for anyone.
I think that's a tough question, right? reason I say that is because I think a lot of times we ignore the cultural component. A lot of times we look at the overall, well, if we place a kid with a family that loves them and cares for them, that's all the child needs, right? But I'll tell you on the other side of that, I work with a lot of clients now who's aged out of foster care and been through that process, and a lot of them are dealing with identity crisis. They're dealing with loss and grief. Anytime you remove, well, let me pose this question. What would happen if somebody came in your home and you were a child and they removed you from your family and they put you with a family that don't look like you? A family that doesn't have the same understanding as you, doesn't have the same cultural beliefs as you. You no longer get to see your family. What would that do to you, right? And so we don't often think about that on the front end, but when I see it on the back end, it looks like addiction. It looks like suicidal ideations. It looks like suicide attempts. And these are the things we work with as a result of it. One of the things I printed out today, I did some research on, placing children within families that look like them, cultural, right? And, we have to think about that because I'll give an example, and I spoke with Dr. Bailey about this. My brother called me one day, and he was highly upset. And my brother's calm, he don't really get upset. So I asked him what was wrong. He said, I just saw this white family walking this kid down the street, and he had a leash on him. He was a black kid, and it's just wrong. And he was upset, right? And I said, wait a minute, right? That's probably a foster family. He said, I think they are. It wasn't the fact that they were doing anything intentionally wrong, because I don't think they were, right? But what did that look like to somebody else looking at that picture? You have a white family walking a kid down the street on a leash. It's like a pet, right? Even though that's not what the intent was, that's what it looks like. And so we do have to be mindful of what we do. We do have to be mindful of the importance of culture and what it means for that child. It might not mean that for us as adults, but what it means for the child is a lot of things, right? One of the studies published by the Youth and Family Service, Child and Family Service Review, found that children placed in foster homes that reflect their racial and cultural backgrounds show lower levels of behavioral problems and better overall adjustments. When we think about teenagers that we place in care, that's in foster care, and we're taking them from their family, their culture, their identity, the things that they know, and we place them with a family that don't look like them, that they have to adjust to. Because the reality is, you're still a black child or a white child in a family that don't look like you, and now you're being dropped off at school, and people are like, oh, you in foster care, right? So they become a target. These are real things that we have to be mindful of. And I know a lot of times this is a tough conversation for people to acknowledge and have, because we think that love trumps everything. Of course, love is what's necessary and what we want, but we also have to be mindful of that cultural piece because it's so important. It makes a difference, and it's a lifelong difference. So just wanted to speak to that.
I would agree that we absolutely have to be mindful of those things. They are critical, and I know that I can speak for Lynchburg. That's a place where we, over the years, that I can say looks very different than it did when I first started working years ago, and it's not perfect by any means, but one of the things, we want kids to live in a home that shares their religion and their faith, and that with people that look like them, but we kind of, in a lot of ways, wanted to take that a step further, and one of the best ways to make sure you get all those things is if you are placed with relatives. If you're in a kinship home, we know that kids who are placed with relatives, they're much more likely to be placed with siblings, to have a cultural match, a religious match, to stay in their communities, and if and when they reunify, it's much more likely to be successful because now that birth parent, those parents, have support within their family that knows what's going on and can hold them accountable. And so that's something we've been focusing really on the kinship care now, probably 10 years, but even every year we probably get a little bit better, and I think because of that, we are seeing so many better outcomes in terms of cultural competence and kids being placed with family, people that look like them. And that's, in this work, regardless of what seat we're in up here, we have to listen to the lived experiences of kids who have been in foster care, who have aged out of the system, and adult adoptees. They should be, in a lot of ways, like the guiding principle in how we do this, and that's what they're telling us. Not that I had to be in a home with somebody that looks like me, but I was, and it made this difference for me, or I wasn't, and this is how it impacted me. And so we have to take those things and do better every single day. And so I think those are things that we have very real conversations about now. Our resource home team, they have really hard conversations. Like, hey, this isn't a match in this child's neighborhood. They'll get to go to the same school, their friends, and the church, but it's a white family and this child is black. Which one's the better outcome? And sometimes that's talking to the child. What are you more comfortable with? voice in that as well. And there are no perfect answers, but I think as long as we keep striving for best practice and what's best for that child, hopefully we'll get there one day. But yeah, those are definitely very, very important conversations to have, and we're doing a much better job nowadays than we were years and years ago.
Thank you for that. We're going to talk about money. So what are some current funding challenges facing the child welfare system? And what are some ideas to help solve some of those challenges? And that's for anyone.
I mean, I feel like this is something I have to unfortunately deal with a lot, so I can start. And in a lot of ways, like when I went into school to be a social worker, this was not part of the plan. This is not something I cared to focus on whatsoever. But I can see now in a more macro perspective of why it's so important, because what I know now is that when the state of Virginia gives us 4 new positions, like that sounds great, right? They're giving Lynchburg Social Services 4 new positions. Hold on. Lynchburg City now has to give a 15.5% match of that. So if Lynchburg isn't gonna come up with that match, I might not get those 4 positions. And so it means totally different things to me now. If we don't get the funding we need, we can't hire more workers, which means kids stay in foster care longer, so we spend triple the money in CSA expenses. And so you can see how it kind of all compounds. And it's complicated too, because we have federal money, we have state money, we have local money, we have grant money. I see Lisa back there, and she, I feel like, is the finance genius when it comes to DSS. But so it can very much complicate things. And if you don't have money for some of the services through CSA, that means sometimes a delay in services. Maybe parents can't get counseling right now. Maybe we don't have the money to pay for substance use treatment. Maybe we can't afford to put this child in the residential treatment facility they need that will be best for them, that will get them further in their progress or in recovery. So money absolutely matters, and it's complicated, but it is definitely a big piece. And I think one of the things that I think sometimes is there are 120 different DSS agencies throughout the state of Virginia. As Dawn said earlier, they're locally administered, state supervised, locally administered. Did I say that right? Which means we all have the same policy and code and guidance, but we all operate a little bit differently, and our resources are different because it's based on what our locality gives us. So when I said like Lynchburg is rich in resources, we are in a lot of ways. It's not perfect, but sometimes our smaller neighbors, they don't have nearly as much of what we have. They might not even have a bus system that can get their clients to services, or maybe all the services are in Lynchburg. And so we all, even within our localities across Virginia, face very different financial struggles and challenges and difficulties. So yeah, I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
Anyone else?
I would just say, coming from where I sit, there is never enough money for what an agency needs to do. There's not enough money to pay the staff well. These workers are out there, as the woman said earlier, I mean, they are doing crazy things for families and not making enough money. There's not enough money to provide the services that they need. If we could have a magic wand and have all the money in the world, we could send all these kids home in 12 months, but there's not enough. There's not enough money to upgrade buildings. Some buildings don't even have a space to meet for family partnership meetings, and they're having to find community partners to use space in their buildings. So the funding is definitely a struggle at the state. We recognize that. You all know General Assembly and going through that budget process. If you go back and do whatever the courthouse rock or whatever that thing is about how money and bills and all of that get done. It's so important that we advocate for more funding for our local agencies so that they can do the work they need to do, and that we can pay workers so that they stay employed with the employer they started with. Because when they're leaving to go to the private sector to make more money, then we have an untrained, brand new workforce. And it's just, so the funding is absolutely one of the biggest issues that I see as a problem for local agencies. And Lynchburg is no different.
briefly speak on money. It's a big part of my job. So it's really difficult to stay, the state of the economy, of course, is a huge factor. I mean, you're being asked to reduce your budgets by 6 to 10%, but everything went up 5 to 15%. So you can't even serve the same kids at the same place with the same budget, but you're asked to decrease it. So just if you are in the community and you're paying attention to what's going on in the city, go speak on our behalf. I mean, that's one thing the community can do that most of us cannot do. But it's difficult to provide services when all the services are going up, and our families and our nation and our city is in a mental health crisis. There's crisis everywhere. There's so much trauma, and it's just unrealistic, but we do the best we can. We got the bubble gum, and we're trying to paste it together, and we got Leroy and Mary and their counterparts out there trying to make miracles happen with the few hours we give them to try to stay in the budget, and when they could use 10 times the hours that we give them to work with. But they get up and do it again the next day, just like the workers do.
That brings me to my next question. Thank you, Ms. Wright. How can community partners, including nonprofits and advocacy groups, better support the child welfare system? And what role do they play in creating a more effective system for children? So how can community partners, nonprofit agencies, and advocates better support the work that y'all do?
I think one thing as a provider, I think what we need to do more is this. I think collaborating to talk about what we offer and what we do and how it's impacting the families. I don't think we meet and talk enough, right? And I think having those conversations about what's happening, what services we're giving them, even having them being a part of those conversations. Oftentimes I know that the case plan or the service plan is written, and it's like, these are the services we need you to do, right? Without collaboration, even the service providers, I know some of the services I provide, I know it's additional things that we probably could do that would bring a better outcome. And I think if we could have more of those conversations where we can all look at things from a different lens and maybe collaboratively come up with something that's more effective, I think that would be something that can improve some of the outcomes that we have. We know that the outpatient counseling and parenting is something that we typically just throw on the table, and that's kind of the cookie cutter for everything. But I think there's so many more things that we can offer. Mary and I know in some cases we've collaborated with services doing counseling. I think that's effective when we can have two counselors in the room with the family. Now you're addressing the whole family, right? And I think that's an approach we really have to be better at, because we're talking about the whole family. But if I'm offering service to mom, service to dad, service often to the child, maybe not, then I bring them all back together and we address the whole family. So I think that collaboration, we can talk more about what's being provided and how we can improve what we do. I think it can be more effective.
I'll piggyback on that a little bit. I think collaboration is essential for these cases because of the timeline, because we need to accomplish a lot. It's necessary, it's imperative. I think amongst the counselors, amongst the workers, and just to piggyback on what multiple people on the panel have said, we have some great workers in this city that go above and beyond and pour their hearts out to these youth and families and try to put forth a diligent effort. And it's tough work, very tough work. But they keep coming back day after day. And the collaboration is necessary. Doing some of the extra things I've seen, we talk about like success stories, and I've seen that make a huge difference. That's been the thing that's been able to help, whether it's the co-parenting piece, getting them on the same page so they can help each other. So a return home can happen, pulling the aunt in. We got a parent struggling right in the middle of a visitation. Well, it goes into family therapy mode on the spot, if need be. We got to do what needs to happen. One thought I had two just to pose for conversation or just a suggestion. I was looking through this and I was thinking about like how could this, like what could we do a little differently? Like what are some ideas? So as we go to that 6-month hearing, that review hearing, you know, we really need to like all come together. What's going well, what's not. We gotta shake this tree. We gotta get this together because we got 6 more months or 5 really before we meet the end and we get to permanency. What really can we do to take this into overdrive to make this effective? What have we seen worked? What have we seen is not working? What can we do and provide this family? If they're committed to doing the services and they're really trying, let's invest in them. Let's do what we can to help them, you know, take this. If they're looking like we can get there, let's do all we can because, you know, you heard me talk about the timeline and its challenges, but we still, on the other end of that, we got kids that are not having permanency for this period of time. So it's challenges on multiple ends. But I think having that meeting and really like taking a serious meeting, I'm not talking about like maybe it's just a treatment team meeting of just the professionals of really saying, hey, this part's not working, but this really is. Let's do more of this. And so I think maybe that might could help us be as productive as possible with this timeline, because I think these parents deserve it, these kids definitely deserve it, and this work deserves it.
So my thought process is a little bit different than what's being talked about at the moment. I'd love to have community support of maybe helping start some support groups or community partners that would be willing to sponsor a 8-week parenting group and help provide a space for food or help fund some of those things, because what really works? Support groups. Because if you're in a group of 10 people who are struggling with the same thing, just hearing that you're not the only one struggling with that from the other person and will hold you accountable is 10,000% more helpful. Well, maybe not more helpful, but helpful, because you feel like you're not alone. Folks in support groups make connections and will call each other outside of the support groups and be a support to each other. So what would I like for a community? Different folks or groups to say, hey, I'm willing to partner with y'all and help provide funding, or a couple of them provide funding and help run that group. And that way it wouldn't have to be at DSS. So you're not going to the place where you feel the most trauma. You're going to a college campus. Who doesn't want to go to a college campus and be like, I'm here with all these other scholars? And it can really change a mindset just where you have the support group at, or that other people, oh, this church started the support group, or this person did. Somebody really cares about me besides the people who are paid to care about me. So that's some of the things I would like to potentially see for our kids too, not just the parents, just other kids being able to hang out and play ping pong upstairs and, you know, let your guard down for 10 minutes because you know you're in a safe place, in a safe space, and can truly enjoy yourself without looking over your shoulder and having to keep turning your head. So that's some of the things I would love to see from the community.
I'm sorry. We get asked that all the time. What can I do? I can't do that. You know, I firmly believe that everybody can do something. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do the biggest thing, but everybody, there's a piece of the puzzle that you can play if you care. And it might just be that you donate school supplies every year. You donate a new backpack every year. Maybe you do want to be a foster parent, or maybe you want to support a foster parent. So maybe you take them a meal every few months. Maybe you provide pajamas for new kids in care. There are also other ways too. Maybe you want to serve on a board. Every social services agency has a board. We have one in Lynchburg. I know all the other localities do too. Maybe that's a volunteer opportunity that you want. You can go be an advocate and sit on a board and go to those meetings every other month or so. There are so many ways, and you don't have to be a foster parent to help in this system. There are so many things you could do. So I just like to say that, yeah, even if it's just a meal every once in a while, that goes so far.
I truly agree with what everyone has stated. I'm going to take everyone back to the classroom, and I know we have some students here. So you may be familiar with micro level social work. And to a certain extent, that's what we do. We work with individuals, we work with families. And I feel that the collaboration, having these honest discussions are beneficial. However, if we truly want change, we're going to have to venture over into macro level social work. Because we talked about the funding challenges. We discussed the barriers with the timeline. Well, it sounds like this could be a systemic issue, so we need to advocate for our children, for our families on a state level, where these policies are being made that affect what we do. And until we address the problem on that level, well, I don't know if anything's going to change, because we can have great ideas, but if we do not go to our legislators, to the governor, to the federal government, and say this is not working, there won't be true change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I probably piggyback off of everyone. We have really great service providers. I know I've called Leroy at 11 p.m. because I'm trying to avoid a removal, and I know he has great rapport with the family and can help de-escalate the situation. I've pulled Mary into a family that doesn't have a service provider yet, just to kind of help us navigate maybe just a crisis happening with a child and a parent. So we do have really great service providers here. I know small things, like I don't know if everybody knows what Isaiah's House is. I know they talk a lot about being there for when children enter care, but they serve way more than just the children that enter care in Lynchburg. I call them numerous times a week just to get formula for a family that is not coming into foster care, but maybe it's just a single mom struggling. Maybe a single mom that doesn't have transportation, that just needs a stroller so she can go on the city bus with 2 kids easier. I know I was just there last weekend, and they had like minimal newborn stuff because I know we use it all. So like just even something so small like that, donating to Isaiah's House, because we use it. I mean, we use it a lot and we use it often. I mean, and sometimes it's really random things like child safety locks for a house because a kid keeps escaping. So it's not always just clothes. We use them for a lot of things. They're really great. They'll go out and buy it, but I know it's very unfortunate sometimes when they have to say no. So I think that is a huge thing. I think another huge thing that we see that causes kids to come into care is the lack of support our families have. Like they don't have relatives here. They don't have, or at least relatives that unfortunately we can approve to use as alternative living arrangements. They don't have babysitters. I know Care Portal has an option where we can request a babysitter and they will run background checks and stuff so that we know that they're going to be appropriate, but there's also not enough volunteers for that. I know I personally had one on a case, and we had somebody from Care Portal come sit with the baby so that mom could do a parenting class for, I think it was 4 weeks in a row, and every week that person from Care Portal was there to help watch that baby so mom could go in that parenting class. So I think it's those little things that really keep our families together that we think are so small, but they are so big in our cases, that really just help out as a community.
Thank you. We're coming close to our time. I knew this was going to run fast, and it did. But I want to end us with an opportunity for everyone to share. Looking ahead, what changes do you believe are necessary for the child welfare system to better serve children and families? And if you could dream, if you could wave a magic wand, what's one thing you would like to see change? And we can start either end, but I'd love everyone's take on that. So looking ahead, what changes do you believe are necessary to better serve children and families? And if you could wave that magic wand, what would happen?
I can start. I think one of the things that I would like to see change is more communication. I think this is the beginning of something that's necessary. If we can collaborate more, for example, just like you talked about Isaiah houses and the services they can offer. I don't know if everybody on the panel knew that, right? And so just having these conversations brings light to things that we sit next to each other every day and don't even know about, right? So that's very important to continue this conversation. And if I could wave a magic wand and have exactly what I want, I think every kid will go home with their family.
Um, but what I see is, well, money, we need more money. But we also need to lower our caseload standard. We need to hold to it. So in foster care right now, our caseload standard is you can have up to 15 cases. And in foster care, one child is one case. 15 is way too many. We need to lower our caseload standard, have it around 6 or 7, and have enough workers to do that. So there needs to be enough money to put more workers in the agencies to do that so they can really work their cases. In addition, I think we need to do a better job of serving our older youth who are aging out of foster care. We have paid providers for all these youth working with them, but when they turn 21, if they remain in fostering futures, money's gone. Those people aren't providing that service anymore. So I would love there to be some way for us to do a better job as a state of serving those older youth.
I'll say one thing I think is very important moving forward is more trainings for everyone and understanding this process and understanding trauma, the significance of that, understanding how it impacts everyone involved with this process. We talked about the workers to the, on top of what we were assuming the discussion was going to be a lot about the kids and the parents, but also the workers and how complex that process is. So support for that, support for the families and the kids. And I would say too, it's always a great day when kids can go home and it's a healthy, good thing, where and I know I've seen you, Judge Payne, when you're praising these parents, and it's a very good day, a positive day. And I know the kids that leave out they've gone back in chambers and they're happy, and you've left a really positive mark on them because they've been warriors getting through this process. So it is a good day when this works out. And like we mentioned too, if it's not with the biological parents, if it's with family, and that works out well. Those are good days.
Okay. Gosh, I feel like one thing is really hard, but I do think the one thing that would help is definitely money and more positions. Like I know myself, last time I counted, I'm supervising almost 130 cases on my own with my workers, and that makes it hard. Leroy made a comment that like we kind of just put like cookie cutter, everyone gets a parent, coach, and counselor, but it's hard to really sit down and meet the needs of all of these 130 families when there's just too many and there's not enough workers, and then when they leave, and you have workers that aren't trained, and the time that goes into training them, and the huge impact when you do send a worker out that's not trained on the field versus someone who has de-escalation skills and the ability to make decisions on safety. So it's just such a huge impact all around, and I think just it trickles down. Like if we had money and more positions, we could do the work that we all, I think, would love and strive to do for the families we're working with.
I think this relates back really to what I was saying earlier, but to the extent that we can help the parents as well as the children who are old enough feel like they are actually part of the process, that they have a real voice that's being listened to, that they're being respected, that their ideas and their solutions for their situation are being heard. I think it's real important. We have family partnership meetings which are designed to do that, and I certainly don't say this to in any way denigrate anyone who's a participant in those processes, but from the perspective of a person who, as guardian ad litem, talks to the older children, as well as the person who talks to the parents, I don't think that a lot of times they come away from those situations feeling like they're actually being listened to. Particularly the parents, I think, feel a lot that they're being dictated to. And I think that, I guess if I could characterize it, I think that a lot of times the parents feel like hurdles are being placed in front of them. I've got to do this to prove that I'm capable of getting my kid back. No, not even that I'm capable. I need to do this to prove that I deserve to to get my kid back. That's sort of the mindset. And so, and that's really not what this process is all about. It's not like you got to prove that you can get your kid back. So anyway, though, I think that to the extent that we can all work together to help them feel empowered and that they're part of the process and not just a cog in the wheel of the process, that would be helpful.
One thing that I have committed to do since sitting on this panel is to do exactly what Mark recommended at the 5-day hearing, which is the first time the parents come in, is to let them know that the whole process is to try to reunite you with your children. All of us are working towards that. You know, I've been on the bench for 12 years, and it never dawned on me. I try to be gentle and understand and give them a booklet about what the steps are going to be. But if they hear it from the bench, our whole purpose right now is try to reunite you with your children, that they can have a safe and stable environment to go to. I think I'm going to implement that. The other thing is that my daughter is getting her degree in social work, and she came to me and said, you know, the foster care system is broken. And I asked her to elaborate. She couldn't, okay? It's easy to say the system is broken because nobody, until you sit here, you really don't understand all of the different pieces that go into the system and all the hard work that everybody is doing to make sure the system is adequate. So I encourage you then, with your knowledge that you have gained and the information you have, when somebody just flippantly says something like that, challenge that, all right? I mean, the statutes are immense that what we have to follow and have to do and have to be involved in. But just to flippantly say the system is broken, you're throwing all these people up here under the bus because the system is not broken. It goes right back to what I said before, and we've heard it again. What is broken? We don't have enough participants for every child and family that needs it. So if somebody comes to you and says the system is broken, I think the first question on your mouth will be, what are you doing to fix it? What are you doing?
Very powerful. Thank you. I don't know how to follow that up, but I will certainly try. Yeah, I think I really like Mark and Judge Payne. Hear you all say, like, reiterating the importance of, like, this is reunification. I do know that's something we say on the front end, but in that moment, that to have your child removed, that's absolutely the worst day of your life. You've gotten to a really low point for that to happen. So most of what we say that day isn't heard, and I think the more we reiterate it from you all and from us and from every perspective, people in the community, I think hopefully.
Time's up.
Oh my God. I said that probably for the morning, and then my alarm didn't go off this morning, so that's probably my morning alarm. That's probably why I was late to work today. Thank you. Yeah, and so if I could change anything, it would be that we invest in prevention as much as a community and as a country as we do in public safety. And I say that because I believe that this work is public safety. We respond to child fatalities. We respond with the police. We respond to overdoses of toddlers on fentanyl. Like we are there when parents have been murdered. And so we see horrific things. That is public safety. And I don't think anybody here is asking to be, you know, the same honor as a police officer and whatnot, to be regarded in that way. But the work that we do keeps the public safe. It keeps children safe. It keeps families safe. And if we could put and pour more money into that on the front end, we will reduce so many of these outcomes. Police knocking on your door. We know that I very much appreciate the work that our police officers do, but they're showing up after they've been called, after it's already happened. Let's prevent them from ever having to come to the door. If we can pour into families, we know that so many parents get to this place because they don't have the support they need, or they don't know what that looks like, or how to be the parent they want to be in some ways. And so if we could invest more on the front end to prevent these things from ever happening, and you know, maybe foster care won't exist one day, maybe Child Protective Services investigations doesn't exist, that's beautiful. But that if I could wave a wand, that's what it would be. We focus so much on the front end, preventing this from ever happening, that the rest of these things aren't even needed. That's my perfect world.
there's so many things that you could say when you're sitting here. And I have thought of like 20, which she said one. So I'm going to just focus on something, again, a little bit different. Teaching the art of listening. Because if we teach the art of listening and caring, then that'll start helping everyone else, and it'll keep going. So our folks need training and time because they come fresh from college and they're not expecting to first day be say, oh, here you go, we don't have enough staff, go do this. But teaching the art of listening, because if we listen to the parents, if we listen to the kids, if we listen to our coworkers, if we start there, think about this week how many times people actually listen to you. Like, do you expect when you say, how are you doing, April? Is April going to really tell me? Because she don't think I'm going to listen. We need to teach the art of listening. It's a lost practice.
We're at the University of Lynchburg. And what happens here? Education. Everyone is learning. And I feel that tonight, this evening, all of us have learned something. You all have learned. One aspect of education that is needed for providers, for caseworkers, is trauma-informed care. I know Mary shared that as well. If we are not trained on what trauma is, the root of it, we are not going to be able to meet that individual where they are. We're not going to be able to connect with them. So education is vital on all aspects. And if I had a magic wand, oh my goodness, just one wish. So we give a lot of support to the families. We give a lot of resources. And then we celebrate when permanency is achieved, when the child returns home. That is wonderful. I could shout for joy when that happens. But unfortunately, often that support ends. So I wish we had a mechanism where we can continue for a certain period of time offering those resources so we can maintain the cohesiveness of the home. So that way the percentage of disrupted placements is reduced. Because I want children to be at home with their families. I really want that. But just because, the Honorable Judge Payne, gives the decree and says, okay, I'm returning you home, that's great. It doesn't end there. Because those families are still dealing with life. So if we can just, work with them, after that achievement is made and say, listen, I'm not going to let you go. We're going to be with you. We're going to offer some additional supports so that way you can remain healthy, both mentally, physically, spiritually.
Well, if I was going to wave a magic wand and create a perfect panel of experts with heart, this is exactly what I would have created. Let's give our panel an applause again. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. It has been a privilege spending time with you. We have a lot of snacks out there, y'all, so if you haven't had dinner, I cordially invite you to enjoy some of that artichoke dip. It is delicious. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful evening. There's a sign-up sheet on the table where the food is by the beverages. If you are interested in future opportunities like this and future collaborative things, let me know or reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to find here at the university. We'll get you connected because connection is important. You all have shared that. Collaboration is essential. And hope is at the heart of all of it. So thank you all for being here tonight. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So she wrote that on my thing to say, I missed it earlier. Walk this thing out, so we don't have to do that.
I've gotta go. Bye. And I'll see you at graduation. I'm sure I'll see you before you graduate. Yeah.
We got a portrait.
That's my buddy right there. I know it's been far too long, hasn't it?
All right, so thank you for coming out.
Yes,
I know, thank you again.
Okay. Yeah, boy, that paper that you talk about, please, Lord. No, I saw it. Get your big one. Yes, sir. Proud of you, congratulations.
All right, let's do it. I appreciate you.
You did your thing. Yeah, that's what it is too. You know what? I talked to him when,
Absolutely. And we'll be in touch. Yes.
About 2 months ago.
Oops, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hey,
Sorry.
time to go.
You gotta go home.
Sorry.
We got the message.
No, that was not